Welcome to Crimson Guitars and welcome to day 4. This guitar is well in progress. We have carved and shaped and even partially finished the neck with fire, because why not? It is fretted, although I have a lot of fretwork to do today. The body and top are now one, so the body has to be fine sanded and rough sanded and stained and then oiled. And maybe even we're going to get some hardware on today. We will see. But there's going to be a lot of rubbing and sanding and filing and prepping. But essentially, we have a guitar. And what if I don't get started and start talking soon? We're just not going to get there. This is the beginning of day 4, so we only have 2 days left. And yeah, let's crack on. So the frets went in yesterday. We have a nice level, none of them are particularly high, so my pressure as I hammered them in was even throughout. They're pretty well seated for the most part. It always helps to double check these things. Okay, so you will notice that I didn't put any glue underneath the frets. It's not absolutely essential to actually glue frets down, although for most of the time that I've been teaching people how to do this and have been doing it, I have always used glue in some way, shape or form while fretting a guitar, and that is not actually to hold the frets in. The tangs will do that for you quite nicely. It is entirely to fill the gap and to solidify the neck as you're going. So what we're going to do now is mask off the fretboard a little bit, because no, I'm going to mask off the neck and leave the fretboard and the fret slots exposed, and use some wicking sort of water fine super glue to go down the fret ends, and just keep it solid, really. Now, on a normal build, we wouldn't have fine sanded and finished the neck at this particular stage. And I'd be able to just glue away and then sand it all off later. I have a microfine little lid on here. I also don't want to... Okay, I don't want the super glue to wick onto the fretboard, if at all. I'd like to avoid that. So it's just a case of putting super fine drops just in there. If you burnish the tape down, it gives a much finer edge. Okay. While we're talking about fret ends, if this is your first time, I feel I should warn you. Most frets are made out of nickel silver, and at this stage they are very pointy, and nickel silver is very good at promoting infection when you wound yourself, and you will. We collect dust. It is a lovely side effect of working wood. Now, dust and superglue mixed together goes really dark, so if I want to match this, Sapili dust works okay. So, take a pinch of dust, put it in the end of the hole. And then just hit it Ooh, too much. Yeah, there's going to be some tightening to do. Okay, and essentially when that is sanded back, there won't be a gap, and the inside of the fret slot has got some glue on it. Rinse, repeat 41 times. I burnished it. It's stuck as it was supposed to. Okay. Yep, our neck is safe. The fret ends have now been filled, and the tuning stability of the whole neck is going to be more stable as a result of that. Fretboard leveling file. At Crimson we make a lot of tools for guitar builders. It's one of our main businesses. The fretboard leveling file is much coarser. It's technically for wood, although it is made out of a metal file, a coarse metal file, and works very well for doing this rather rapidly. Now, I'm not holding it flat. I'm at an angle. This is going to... tighten that up. This is going to roll over the edge of the fretboard slightly, which makes the whole guitar much more comfortable to play. It ends up feeling like a vintage instrument that's been played a lot, basically. But also, the side effect is that in our case, I'm not filing the already finished neck. Keep the metal dust down, if at all possible. Onto the fret leveling file, which is finer. This is actually a prototype, which is even finer. Guitar builders tend to use files a lot more than general woodworkers, and they don't know what they're missing. Okay, now I haven't put the correct angle on the edge of the frets yet. I'm just tidying up from the last job before I get to that. The other thing I am being aware of is I don't want to change the shape along its length. I'm trying to cut relatively evenly. There are places where there was more superglue built up than others. So if I pay attention to what's been removed and what hasn't, I'll be able to see if it's straight or not. Okay, this here is a fret end beveling file, and it basically puts an angle of roughly 30 degrees. Okay, what I tend to do is start the process with that, get the correct angle, and then match that angle using the fretboard leveling file, because it does go much faster this way. Now if you listen carefully, you hear the difference when I start hitting wood. You didn't have to listen carefully at all, it's blatantly obvious. Now, I don't want a perfectly square edge. I want it to be rounded over so it is more comfortable. I also don't want to go too far, because if you go too far, you have to either push the strings in or the outer two strings will slip off too much. So do it, but do it just right. If you put roughly 3/4 to a mil of chamfer on, or round over, so it's small, very small, you should be okay. And there we have it. Almost comfortable. Take two. Okay, there's a couple of spots where I've let super glue get onto the fretboard. So I'll have to sort those out in a little while, but for now, fret end dressing. Okay, now with this one, this file has one perfectly flat end or edge ground on it and one slightly rounded edge. With the flat edge, I go and just gently rip the corner off the fret. And I'm trying to do it flush with the bottom of the fretboard. And this is all to make it comfortable. They say fretwork is the most important part of a, well, it's one of the most important parts of a guitar. The fret ends is one of the most important parts of fretwork. Okay, wet and dry, 400 grit. You could go down to 320 or 400 if necessary. And this is just continuing on the rounding over process. Folded them 3 times, round it again, and you could even wrap it around a piece of dowel or something, or your finger, which is what I tend to do. Like that. And this should be going over the edges, following the rounds that we've created, and polishing the fret ends up as well. The side effect is friction, which has a side effect of exothermic reaction and your finger burns. And there you have it. So not only do we have nicely polished fret ends and something that's not digging into your hands, but you also cannot see the bottom of the fret slots. There's no hole. And the incredibly different colour of the sapele is actually matched perfectly now with the Zero-Koto fretboard. And it just looks like the frets just grew there, which is ideal. And a rare result. A lot of guitar building, especially when you have a limited time, is to figure out what you can do while you're waiting for something else to happen. So I can do the fretwork while the finish on the body is curing. As I was about to say that, I can also, I've realized, do the sanding on the body while the finish on the neck is curing. So what I'm actually going to do now is apply oil finish to the neck and see how that develops. I do have one problem though. Misguidedly, I only burnt up to this point, and that would be fine, except for the fact that, of course, the neck ends there for one, so we've got a white section. So unfortunately, Unfortunately, I need to get the fire out again and just touch that little bit up. And then we're going to apply oil, set that aside and do a couple of coats of guitar finishing oil while the instrument is being sanded down and processed and brought to, you know, a stage where that too can be oiled. And then we'll jump between the two and hopefully finish this build in short time. So bring on the fire. Fixed, no problems. We have a product that we have manufactured for us called guitar finishing oil, and it's fantastic. And I designed it to be very penetrative, and then to build up after that into a good finish. But I'm toying with the idea of having a double viscosity, even higher build version. And this is the prototype for that. I must also say that this is, without a doubt, my favourite part of the job. Not the actual applying, but seeing what happens when you do. Are you ready? So the difference between those two. I just love it. Okay. Now, you might be asking why I haven't masked off the fretboard, and that is because that takes time. I don't want oil on there, particularly, although it isn't going to hurt. But if I'd masked it off, and any oil did get underneath, I wouldn't know until much later in the process, and it would have fully cured, and then I'd have to scrape and clean it. And use acetone and all that jazz again. Whereas now, if I get some on, I can see that I've got some on, and then go back and, you know, sort it out. We're onto the body. This thing is going to be stunning. It wants to be. It needs to be. We'll see how it goes. I need to do some sanding and fine sanding and shaping and bits and pieces. I'm going to adjust the bevels, probably with a spoke shave and scrapers and things like that. But for now, I want to get the two largest faces sanded to, you know, 180, 240-ish. And for that, random orbital sander and air filter. It's remote control. High technology. It's actually quite scary. When it's in, you know, the geared and the high speed and the stuff, it's a beast. In doing that, I realized that I'm jumping the gun just a little bit. There's supposed to be some holes along here, and in order to drill those holes, I have to have the bridge, which means unboxing time. I phoned up one of my favorite suppliers in the world, All Parts. Really looking forward to this. This stage where the guitar's about to come together, there is a problem, and it's a psychological issue. When you get to this stage, you really want to just get the strings on. And a lot of the time, when I first started, I used to rush it. And the final finishing, the final 5% of work that you do, is the first thing that the client is going to see and feel and experience. And if you rush that bit just to get some strings on, you're in trouble. So don't rush. We've got like a day and 3/4 to do it anyway. So I've been after a telly for myself. I say for myself, basically what's going to happen now is this guitar is for me. I'm going to play it and keep it, but every time we do a guitar show or have a client around, it'll be available for people to see. So it's a way of keeping the guitar, but it's mine. And I've been after a telly for a while. And people keep on saying, why don't you build yourself one? Because I don't have time. I need an excuse. So the big question is, in limited tool build, without a pillar drill, how the devil do I do this? I'm fairly good with one of these. I don't trust myself 100%. Basically, okay, what I have to do is the strings on this guitar go through these 6 holes, right through the body, and are seated into little ferrules. Okay, so I need to drill 6 small holes all the way through the body accurately. Yeah, it's no problem. I can do it and just have a wavy, horrible line, but we don't want that. This is actually the closest I've come to giving up on the limited tool idea, because I do have a pillar drill right there. But anyway, first of all, our neck is cured a little bit. I need to make sure that I'm happy with the positioning of the bridge. And once we've got that, we can then work out where I need to drill holes. And I'm furiously going to think while I'm doing that, and hopefully figure out how I'm going to do the rest of it. Okay, that's interesting. The act of burning the neck has taken off just a little bit of material, which has meant that neck pocket is not as tight as I would normally like. It's not going to be an issue, but it's not ideal. Still a damn sight tighter than most. Okay. Headstock, boom. There we go. So I have two things. I have many things. I'm having to line this up on the center line. I already have a hole for my pickup, and then we've got an adjustable scale length there. And as long as I've got the ability to adjust the scale length to on either side of 648 millimeters, then I'm fine. And I do. But just to make sure, I'm actually going to install the bridge pickup and make sure it fits in that cavity nicely. Stacked baby. Sorry, I tend to anthropomorphize what I'm working with. Oh. That bridge is steel or metal of some sort. No duh. Magnetic. It's magnetic. Ah. There we go. It's flaked, but it'll do the job. No more squeaking. There we go. There is still going to be a hole for the jack socket. We might as well get that done at the same time. That's there. Eyeball the centre. I'm fairly good at eyeballing things now. If you're not, always double check. Far deeper than I have to go, but why not? Okay, there's going to be one last hole to be drilled later, once the bridge is in place. No, this is a tele bridge. Doesn't really, I think, need an earth wire, because that is earthed, that is earthed, that is connected to the metal, which is connected to the metal, which is connected to the strings, so we're sorted. Back to where we were before we were cruelly sidetracked by a hand drill. Okay, so we have a little bit of wiggle room there, and you're out the way. Yeah, that's pretty much back in the centre there. Neck is in. Now, 640, I'm roughly 643, but I've got 20 mil of travel or more. So I want these to be there, but they'll adjust on the screws, so that's fine. All I really need to worry about is how central it is. Well, less than a mil off. It says these 6 holes that have to go through the entire body. I have several options. I have several options open to me. Number one is I use a pillar drill, which is the correct and right and proper way to do this. Number two is I drill part-way through from one side, part-way through from the other, meet in the middle, jiggery-pokery, we sorted. And that's pretty much how we're going to do it. What I would normally do on a pillar drill is drill through on the 2 outer holes, use those as locating pins, draw out the rest of the positions, and then drill from behind in order to make those meet up. I don't trust myself to drill all the way through by hand. So what I'm going to do now is hopefully hopefully work it out properly. And that involves figuring out exactly where on the body these holes are, and then marking it out in the same fashion from the other side. And then hopefully it's just a case of meeting in the middle. So my holes are 132 millimeters away from that square edge. And I already have a center line, which is fine. So there we go. The holes should be based along that line, and yeah, I shouldn't have an issue. Somebody's stolen my nice protractor. We have students here as well, and I thought it made more sense for them to have my nice one than for me to have it, seeing as there's more of them than me. Hardships in life, eh? There we go. So I have that line centered up, and we're in the same position as before. As long as I've got these properly centered, which I kind of do, that's all we need. So move that just a fraction that way. This is where I find that I misread the ruler, and instead of 132 I've done 162 or something silly. But that's not the case. I should have checked that first, really. Okay, holes are marked out. Now what we're fitting are these ferrules, which have my calipers have been found and returned to me. Yeah, just over 8 mil bushing. So I need an 8 mil hole in there, and I'm going to start with that. I'm not drilling all the way through. I also have a problem. This is spalted ash and is really soft. Which is fine, except it's soft in some places, hard in others. And it's causing me issues. I have a couple of little tear-outs there that I definitely don't normally get with this drill bit. We now have a slight issue there, and I don't think I'm going to be able to, because the edges are all iffy, I don't think I'm going to be able to get where I want to. So I'm going to start with a 4 mil, and I'm going down the pilot hole. And then we're on to a step drill. These are generally used for metal work, but they're also incredibly useful for guitar building. 3.5mm brad point. Where we now have a problem is actually making the holes meet up. Let's see how long that lasts. So I'm just going to go straight down. I don't want to go all the way through. Whoop. Well, we have contact. Then again, instead of a center point, I'm going to a standard twist drill now. Yeah. We're okay. Yeah. Well, not catastrophic, slightly off. We have success. We have success. Ha ha! All right. Now, I didn't want to have a massive sort of 5mm, 6mm hole in between the 2 points, because the string, short as it is between those 2 points, people whom I respect and tend to believe have said that that causes a mini vibration inside of the guitar, which then causes a feedback of just an extra tonality that you don't necessarily want. A jangle, a jingle, something. So yeah, smaller holes, which also means more flexible drill bits, sadly. But anyway, that's, you know, actually done. Woohoo. Yeah, spot on. Okay, well, while we're here, we'll drill some pilot holes for these, for the screws that are going to hold the bridge in place. Back to the 3.5mm. So, bridge is in position. I suppose we should also sort out the neck plate, because this is the only bit that we haven't really sorted out is these edges. So in the final sanding and carving, etc., we're going to have to sort that out. I'm trying to remember, I haven't personally built a bolt-on guitar, a bolt-on neck guitar, for easily a decade. So this is new to me. That's roughly where I think it should be. And then Yep, that's good. Oh. Soft wood is fine, hard wood is fine. A wood that is a mixture between the two is infuriating. But pretty. Four mil screw, 4.5 mil hole. These fantastic drill bits. Right, finally, sanding. On to the hand sanding. I could use scrapers and that would be cool. We have too much variation. I could use scrapers and that would be awesome. I love scrapers. I prefer scrapers over sandpaper any day, really. But in this case, we have too much variation between hard and soft, spalting and not spalting, etc. So I'm just going to use sandpaper throughout and be done with it. I need to do a little bit more shaping here with a Iwasaki rasp, I suppose, and then yeah, sand away, sir. Yeah, we're not taking very much. And ready for stain. Now, at this stage what I would normally do is damp down the whole guitar, raise the grain, sand it again with 320 or 400 grit paper, and do that until the grain stops raising, and then stain, etc. I'm not going to do that. We're running low on time. This is we've just begun the second half of day 4 of 5, and I really need to get some finish on here. I'm going to be doing a stain. We have Crimson Guitar's range of guitar stains to complement the guitar finishing oil, and I'm going to start with a black, rub that back, and then hit it with some amber and red and see where it takes me. So the trick with stain is to apply it fairly dry. What I'm planning, and I hope that this actually works properly, what I'm planning is that this hard chamfer is going to be natural sycamore, and the stain is going to be just on the top of that. If I mess this up and put stain on the chamfer, I might either stain the whole thing or sand it, and it might actually not look good, so we might stain it anyway. So there we go. Start with black. relatively dry on the rag. And you go from the middle out. Now this is a water-based stain, so this is raising the grain. But the reason why I don't really care about that is I'm going to be sanding this back anyway. So that is grey. The grain is somewhat raised. We're going to leave this for 5 minutes to cure. Dry. There we go. And then we're going to sand that back and start properly playing with colour. Okay, 400 grit, and this is going to remove some of the raised grain for one, but it's also going to remove some of the staining. Okay, part one. Stage one complete. I'm just playing at this point, okay? There are, if I just use the red, I know what I'll get. If I use the amber, I know what I'll get. I'm going to see what it looks like having a red to amber stain going from the bottom to the top of the guitar. You'll notice that when I'm folding my tissue up, it's not crumpled, it's not a mess, it is a tool with edges, and it's relatively solid. It doesn't survive first contact with the stain, but we've started with something that looks like a tool, at least. Okay. So the black, or grey, as it has become, picks out the flaming and accentuates the whole thing. And we end up with that. Now, what I'm actually going to do, I've changed my mind again. This red is a little bit bright. Which one? This is the crimson red. This is a little bit brighter than I'd hoped, and doesn't quite match in my mind with the fantastic colours that we've got on that neck. So I'm going to do the whole body in this red, rub it down again a little bit, and then hit the whole top with some amber stain. Doing this because the grain has raised again just a fraction. There we have the colour I want. close enough. I think yellow on top of that would actually finish it off. The question is, do I want to carry on playing or not? Not. No, I'm going to stop here. I'm quite happy with the colour. The oil has a slight yellowish tint and it's going to brighten the whole thing up. So, yeah. There we go. I'm going to let this dry for a little while and then we are back. Well, actually I can do some sanding while it's drying. So I'll just have to tidy up just a few spots on the edge. Possible. Our first coat of oil in the middle, first 2 or 3 coats actually, will go on there, and then the backs will be done when we can avoid colour transfer, basically. So, oh, I forgot we're playing with the new double strength. Well, where is mine? There we go. The fun part. Yet again. I love my life. I really, really, really enjoy my life. Okay, that's the first coat. Just for fun, I'm going to rub that in. There we go. Here's some 1500. And this means that I can get a better finish quicker than otherwise. And speed is currently something we're thinking about. I have some yellow oil-based stain that I was thinking about maybe putting on top at this stage. Because it's still not quite, but actually, I really like that. Doesn't go. That, however, ooh, I do have a slight potential issue. I've made a huge chamfer. While that's drying for a fraction of a second, let's see if I've made a mistake. This scratch plate is obviously for a standard T-type. And what I've built isn't. Ah, there we go. Now that works. We didn't have very much stain or pigment come off. At least until I started using the 1500. So I feel comfortable applying oil to the whole thing. Fresh tool. I could use a brush, but I don't want to get quite that much on. Okay, so I'm flooding this now, just to get as much into the grain as possible. It is also inordinately hot here at the moment, so this is going to start curing pretty much straight away. I did forget to say one thing. Wow. This wood is really living up to what I thought it was going to be. Yeah. At this stage we normally drill a hook into the back end where the truss rod, where the strap button goes. And then, I'm not entirely sure how we've got brush bristles in it, but hey, what an interesting life. But it is so warm that I'm not going to do that. I'm going straight to the rubbing off the excess mode. Yep. Oil coming off, not pigment. Now, when I say rub off the excess, what I'm saying is rub off the excess. Do not leave even a little bit of tacky feeling. It needs to feel almost dry. And that's actually why I don't wear gloves. I should wear gloves. It's not particularly toxic stuff. But there are dryers and bits and pieces in the oils that we probably don't want on our skin. Saying that, I can go, and that feels dry and nice and soft. So once I've rubbed this whole guitar down, which is a strangely physically demanding task, I will put a hook in its bottom and hang it on a wall for 2 or 3 hours to actually cure and dry. And I'm going to put several more coats on today. And by the time we get back tomorrow morning, we'll be able to put hardware and strings and things. Play a guitar. Now my neck does need a few more applications of the oil as well, while we're in the mood. At this point, I do need to specifically warn you that this oil is much like linseed oil, teak oil, I think tung oil as well, in that if you leave an oil-soaked rag floating around your workshop to dry, crumple it up, put it in a bin. If you do that, you run the risk of burning down your workshop. And that's not an old woodworker's tale. As the oil cures, it has an exothermic reaction, and there are verifiable, documented cases of this being the cause of people's entire workshops burning down. So yeah, we have big tubs of water around the workshop, and these rags go straight in them when we're done. And I implore you to do the same. Okay, I'm going to leave that to cure, hopefully not exothermically. Leave that to set for 5-10 minutes, rub it down, set it aside. And yeah, I have a few more coats of oil to apply over the rest of the day. We are, for all intents and purposes, now at the end of day 4. Tomorrow is the final fretwork, so I will level the frets, crown and polish them very gently. I will install hardware and pickups, weep gently while I wire it up. I don't like that part. And then assault your ears, hopefully, with a fully functional, fully playable guitar built in 5 days, with limited hand tools. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. Click like and subscribe. Share with your friends. Go to the workshop and make some sawdust. That's the important bit. Goodbye.